All right, what is up, folks? Welcome back to another episode of Lifting, Running, and Living with your favorite coaches, Kelly,
Hello.
Hey, and JK. That's me. We are back, episode number 49. So, as we typically do, let's kick it off with updates. So, Kelly, why don't you start by updating us on what you've got going on?
Yeah. So if you listened to last episode, we recorded 2 Tuesdays ago. We're recording on another Tuesday because my Sundays have been crazy lately.
Yeah.
But last time, by the time we were recording, I had done my retest of my deadlift 1 rep max.
Yes.
So now I've done the other 3. So bench, back squat, overhead press. And I'm happy to report I have a new PR in all 3.
Yeah.
All-time
Congratulations.
PRs.
Oh, snap. All
Yeah.
time. Okay. Well,
Well,
congratulations.
back squat I had never done before, so hard to not get an all-time PR when my first 1 rep max test was 9 weeks prior.
Let's not get bogged down in the details here. It's fine.
Exactly. A
Yeah,
PR is a PR. But
exactly.
I was really excited, mostly I texted you the day I did bench because my all-time PR was 100 before,
Mhm.
and I just eked out 102.5. So
Nice.
that
Nice.
was exciting. I tried for 105 and I got stuck at the sticking point. And I was like, "Oh no."
Okay. Fair.
Yeah. But that was 7.5 pound improvement over the 8 or 9 weeks prior, whatever it was. So that's exciting because that's a lot for upper body
Yeah.
for anyone doing the math. And then squat went up by 15 pounds, which I kind of expected.
Yeah.
Mostly because, like I told you when I first tested, that it was just weird having that much weight on my back because I'd
Yeah.
never really done it.
Yeah.
So I felt more confident going into this one because I had obviously squatted more during the phase.
And this was
So that
over
was
9
exciting.
weeks again, right? Remind me. 9 weeks or 8
Yeah.
weeks?
So like the first test was 9 weeks ago, and then was 8 weeks of the cycle,
Right.
and
Okay.
then yeah.
Okay. Nice.
So and then overhead press also went up by 7.5 pounds, which probably was the most exciting one, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because overhead press, especially doing it after back squatting, is so humbling because you can't do much. You know?
That's fair. Pretty much anything shoulder related. It's like lateral raises,
Yeah,
Just yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel you
And
on that.
yeah, so I went from 75 pounds to 82.5. So that obviously was the lowest of the 4. So 7.5 pounds is the largest percentage increase for that lift.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
So very happy with all of those.
Okay.
And
So what's next for training for you now from the lifting perspective?
lifting, I'm aiming to go back to 2 days a week, full body.
Okay.
I do want to keep focusing on heavier deadlifts. And I haven't decided if I want to focus more on bench or squat as my second day. Maybe both, since they're opposite parts of the body. But
Okay.
yeah, I am curious because last time I mentioned that the 531 program, I didn't like not having as much volume at higher weights.
Uh-huh.
So I'm curious if I do that with the running, if that will help with the deadlift.
Mm.
And then maybe I'll retest again like in the summer.
Okay. Yeah, that'll be interesting. So moving to a 2-day split, 2 days full
Mhm.
body, because
Yeah.
your running volume then picks up quite a bit. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I'm aiming to get back. I've been hovering around like 26, 27 miles.
Hmm.
So I'd like to work my way back up to like around the 40s again, like I was before the Seattle trip when my heels started hurting.
Yeah. Yeah. You should really pick that back up, slacker. Yeah.
I know, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Got races in July, so
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay.
but yeah, that's the training updates.
All right.
And then I have another big update.
Yeah, I see this on the
You
rundown.
see the note?
I don't know
Yeah,
the details on this.
I know. I just told my athletes last Friday. It was right before I went to Savannah this past weekend, which is why we're recording on a Tuesday for anyone who doesn't know. But I've decided this year to phase out of coaching officially.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
I know. So I don't know if we'll have to change your intro.
I will. I don't know. We'll take suggestions for what people think. As if right now it'd be your favorite coach and former coach.
Yeah,
I don't
technically,
know. We'll figure it out. I'm not worried
yeah.
about that. Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, it's just what is this, April? I'm almost 7 months into this job now,
Mm-hmm.
and doing both of them is really challenging to be
Okay.
able to, like, give my athletes the attention they deserve, um, and to want to coach after working full time.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's fair.
yeah, and I am working towards a promotion by the end of the year, so I'm taking on
Oh,
more responsibility at work, which is exciting, but yeah, it just feels like it's time, which is sad but exciting. And
yeah.
all of my athletes are very understanding, so I appreciate them. But yeah.
What is the time frame for phasing that out? What's that look like?
So I told them it's kind of up to them. I would coach them to whatever A race they want this year. 'Cause some of them, it's coming up pretty soon. Some of them, it's not till later in the year.
Okay.
But yeah, so a handful are phasing out this month and next, which
Gotcha.
will give me a little more breathing room for the rest of the year for those who have later races. So yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, congrats on
Yeah.
the next step.
Thanks.
There you go. We got some time until the last athlete has their A race. We got time to figure out the intro. You
Yeah.
know, since the intro that we currently have was such a well thought out and
Such a
strategized
banger.
result. I know. It's all right. I'll go to Chat GPT and see what it suggests for me.
ChatGPT is so bad at naming intros, things like that, I feel like. It's it's we've
Mm,
talked about
it depends on
how.
what you input.
Yeah.
I'm
Oh, that's fair.
just I'm just saying. Yeah, we've always said that. We've always yeah, we got to live
Yeah.
it too. We've always said that. Depends on
Yeah.
what you put in, you know?
That is true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, so yeah, that's coming this year. And then I went to Savannah, which was really nice for 3 days, technically like 2.5 days. Uh, just got to hang out with family, attend my cousin's wedding,
Nice.
and just die in the heat and humidity. It's already 80 degrees there, and it's so humid.
Oh,
I
wow.
just I don't know how people live there, but being at sea level was nice minus the humidity.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Pictures looked good. Guys were styling and
Oh,
profiling.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It was a black tie optional wedding, so I took the opportunity to dress up, do more makeup than usual, and fully go all in. And one funny thing that happened is we've mentioned before my parents listen to this podcast, so hi mom and
Yes.
dad. Uh,
Hey.
Ty and I stayed with them for the wedding, and anytime something not ideal would happen, my mom would be like, "Oh no, are we gonna hear this on the podcast now?"
Well, there you have it.
But it was such small things. I was like, "No, those don't warrant an update from me." But it was funny. Uh,
Well, next time we'll do what we can to try and just do an entire episode of random insignificant things that happened. We're just gonna that's maybe that'll be a slot when we hit a new phase of episodes, and we'll just have a
Random stories.
yeah. Here's a random insignificant moment from the
Yeah.
past 2 weeks. There you go.
Oh, that does remind me. This is insignificant probably to most, but not to me. So, the whole Southwest drama where they're changing basically everything that's unique about them, the airline.
I am aware that they are no longer doing the bags fly free thing.
No longer bags fly free, no longer
Okay.
open seating, which people have mixed feelings
Okay.
about.
So you have a seating assignment now?
Yeah,
I,
which likely means they're gonna charge more, like, the
mm,
other, like, airlines to have a better seat,
hmm.
uh, which will be curious because Southwest doesn't have all the seats are the same, right? But, like, in other planes, there's, like, the first class that has
Oh,
more
yeah.
room.
Yeah, I
There's certain
gotcha.
seats that have more leg room and then, like, the
Right.
economy seats. So, I'll be curious to see what Southwest does, but partially because of that and partially because Southwest doesn't go direct to Savannah,
Hmm.
I have switched to United. So I flew United, not for the first time, but for the first time, like with the app and everything, because I'm pretty sure I'm just gonna switch for good now because
Uh-huh.
Southwest has lost my loyalty.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, okay. This is a longer story than I intended, but
Okay.
I got the United credit card to pay
Hmm.
for our flights because if you spend a certain amount, you get 60,000 miles. So I was
Okay.
like, no brainer. These flights aren't the most cheap because we're going to
Right.
Savannah, which is small. Uh, so I was like, well, this will be great because then I can just accumulate miles forever now and just fly United. But what I did not realize, not flying Southwest, because I'm always flying Southwest, is the United app is so nice. Like
Oh, like the user interface and whatnot?
the user interface, the notifications, step by step, it would tell me where I needed to go next, which
Mm.
is like boggles my mind. Southwest doesn't tell you anything, right? But United was like, okay, if you don't know this airport, have someone drop you off here, and then it'll open a map and it'll be like, turn here, go here. This is how long it'll take you to get to your gate.
Oh, that's legit. Okay.
Uh-huh. Um, and
Nice.
then it has, like, your seat number is at, like, the top of my iPhone when the notification is squished,
Yeah.
um, if that's the next step, and then it has, like, a countdown to when you're boarding, and then once you're boarding, it has a countdown to departure, and then if you're connected to the Wi-Fi, not the paid Wi-Fi, the free Wi-Fi,
Hmm.
it has a countdown to when you land at
Oh,
the top.
nice. Okay.
Yeah, and then when you land, it pops up with your baggage claim.
So, man, United out here doing the thing, huh?
I know. I was I can tell you, I was amazed.
It sounds like it.
Yeah, so I'm very pleased with their app. You can also order things on the app food-wise if you want. We didn't do that, but apparently you have that ability.
For a
I was
nominal
just like,
fee, I'm sure.
yeah, for a nominal fee.
Yeah.
Uh, but wild. I
Well,
just have been living with such low standards with Southwest apparently.
now, not being I myself not being a frequent flyer these days at all, flying
Mhm.
maybe average once a year, I think at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, flying like once a year. Um, I do recall within the past couple of years, remember when Southwest had that major issue with
Mm.
um,
I've
everything being grounded or a large percentage of flights being grounded for like a couple days or say it was something
oh, yes.
wacky. And then I remember, as I normally do, listening to a couple of podcasts about the issue itself. And one of the biggest knocks on them was that they had not reinvested in their infrastructure to update their systems and things like that in
Yep.
like a very, very long time. And so you had people, alleging that, hey, this has been an issue for a really long time. It's just that it finally came to a head because when there was something that went wrong, all of a sudden they didn't know like where particular crews were and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
hearing you share your feedback on, say United's interface and their user experience, I guess, compared to Southwest, not surprising in the least bit. Like not in the least bit. So
Yeah, that's
yeah.
fair. I totally forgot about that, and that was, if I remember correctly, right around Christmas when that happened.
I think
It
you're
was, like,
correct.
a very inopportune time for it to happen.
Yeah, that did not go well. But like most things, it came down to it wasn't a freak thing. Well, it was a freak thing that happened. However, it exposed something that had been an issue that people had been complaining about for like
Yeah.
internally for it sounded like a really long time. So Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, shout out United for having a nice user interface. Do you have
Shout out United.
do you have TSA PreCheck?
Do I have TSA
Do you?
PreCheck?
Okay.
I've had TSA PreCheck for like 8 years now, and I
Gotcha.
got so annoyed at Ty not having it that I got it for him for Christmas at 1 year.
When I was in when I was in Vegas last year, the other coaches that all the pop coaches, we went out to dinner one night, and somehow TSA PreCheck came up, and the absolute horror on all of their faces when I was like, "No, I don't have TSA PreCheck. I don't really care that much. One, I don't fly that often, and
That makes sense
two,
then.
well, that was a point of contention because I was like, one, I don't fly that often, and immediately over half of the table was like, it doesn't matter if you fly once, it's worth it. And then secondly, I was like, I really just don't. I don't care. Like I'm fine standing in a line, and what I mean, they were horrified is not over exaggerating. It's still
No,
talked about to this day how upset
I
they are.
have the same reaction. I just now that I don't have to take off my shoes and take my laptop out of my bag, I'm never going
Yeah,
back.
that's
I will
fair.
pay
That's cool.
whatever they want me to pay for TSA PreCheck, which,
Yeah.
by the way, is very affordable because
Okay.
I just went through the
That's what I've
renewal,
heard. Yeah.
I think last year. Yeah, the
Mhm.
first 5 years, it was like $85, which $85 for 5 years,
Yeah.
very cheap. And
Yeah.
then the renewal was like 70 for the next 5 years, so
Mm,
even cheaper.
okay.
Yeah,
Well, I don't
so
know. I think now it's more of a I'm just being petty sort of thing now, just out of spite. I'm like, no,
yeah.
I won't do it. But who knows?
Okay,
At some point, I probably will. I'm in no hurry because I don't have anything planned. So,
have you traveled with someone that does have it?
not no.
Okay.
No, and I
I've
would
seen
not
this
expect them to wait for me or anything like that. I would
okay,
just
that was
yeah,
my question.
not at all.
I've seen discussions
No.
on Reddit when people, like, get offended if you, like, ditch them if you have TSA PreCheck, and I'm like, "I'm not waiting for you."
No. I not in the least
We
bit would I expect them to
yeah,
wait for me. No. Mm-mm.
we're all adults, we know where we're going, we can regroup.
Yeah, it's all good. So,
Yeah.
all right.
Anyway, what's up with you?
Yeah. So with me, one quickie that you reminded me of when you were talking about going to a wedding. I also went to a wedding this past weekend.
Hmm,
It was local here, so
fun.
somebody who's acquainted with my wife. So, yeah, first time it's been a while since I've been to a wedding. I think it's probably a couple of years. I think
Hmm.
when my friend Mike and Mel, then when they got married. So yeah, it's been a while. So yeah, the little wedding thing that was cool, and it's been a while since I slapped on a bow tie. So there we go.
Oh,
Um,
bow tie,
so
that's
that
fancy.
yeah, I'm more of a bow tie guy than I
A
am
tie.
ties these days. Yeah, my
Mm,
first um, my like Instagram that I primarily use because I have like a personal one that's basically photo album. But my coach JK McLeod one, the previous name that I went under was Bow Ties and Barbells because
oh,
when I was working for DSW Designer Shoe Warehouse, I was running a store in Chicago, and we dressed up, or you wore like business. It's supposed to be like business casual, but you wore jeans and
okay.
whatnot. Like fashion forward though. People, if you've
Yeah,
been in a DSW, then you get it.
yeah.
But I was not all about like wearing ties. I was like, but I will rock a bow tie. So I still have like a drawer full of bow ties because it's just I just enjoy bow ties more. I don't know. So, anyways, so yeah, went to the wedding. That was very nice, very cool. And then, really, my one thing that I'll share is for April. So going into this, or now we're in the second quarter of the year. I did a little
Yep.
switch up with my morning routine. Um,
Oh.
so not this was not inspired by that viral video that's going like crazy with Ashton Hall. I hope
The
he's
one that
getting
starts at, like, 3:30 AM or something?
yeah, like 3:30 AM, and then there's, like, some random person, like, serving food, and he's, like,
Mm.
rubbing a banana peel on his face and other
Yeah,
stuff.
dunking his
Yeah.
face in water, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I hope he's getting, like, paid off of that because do your thing, man. Do your thing. The guy clearly focuses on taking care of himself. Can't hate on that.
Yeah.
Uh, but very, very simple and so far helpful change in the morning. So my typical morning routine is that I have generally a natural wake up. Let's just say it's pre 5 a.m. my natural wake up time. So we get up and get ready and go to the gym. But while I'm getting ready to go to the gym, after doing like just your basics, like brush your teeth, all that good stuff, I would pop on a podcast. And there's usually, I don't know, about 3 or 4 different ones that I would cycle through, not all 3 to 4, but it'd be something like either one of the Daily Stoic or Daily Dad podcasts. There's another podcast I
Mm.
listen to called Next Level University. There's another one that's like 10-minute Bible talks. Like there's something that's a little bit more cerebral in the
Yeah.
morning, like motivational, inspirational, whatever. And I decided to switch that up just because as I was going back and just kind of doing some reflection from January, February, March, so Q1.
Mhm.
And side note, I found out that I put out an Instagram poll to see like, just asking people, do you go back and reflect just personally for the
Mhm.
first quarter of the year? It was 100% said no. Oh, no. No. That's not right. Right before it closed out, there was one person who said yes, but everybody. So basically, it was like 99% of the people said no, that they don't do that. So that would kind of surprise me, especially based on the followers that I have.
Mm.
But I did notice that the majority of the people who responded were like business coaches and
Hmm.
content coaches and stuff. I don't know. That was weird. But anyways,
Interesting.
so the change that I made is for the most part, I just listen to like instrumental type stuff until I get to the gym in the morning.
Mm.
Because what I found is that I was in the morning when I am pretty much, from my perspective, at my most like creative and whatnot, I had too much going on. Like it
Oh.
was like personal development overload in the
Mhm.
morning, just like way too much going on. Cause it'd be like pop on this one thing that's like quote of the day. So that was like 8 minutes, then listen to this other podcast that was like 20 minutes. And by the time I've gotten to the gym and I've gotten warmed up and I'm getting ready to go, I've listened to like 3 different messages.
Yeah.
And then my juices are already flowing. Like I tend to be like pretty, like the morning is more of my brain productive
Yeah.
time. Clearly right now is not, because I can't form a full sentence. Um, so I was like, I need to clear just some of that noise because I already have enough internal dialogue that's going
Mm.
on my own. So I switched over to mostly like stuff that I would listen to when I'm working at my desk. So more
Mm.
like chill organic house, EDM, some Afro beats, like stuff like that. So that's my morning routine change as of right now, is basically minimal words in the morning, minimal spoken words. I'll still read
Yeah.
like either Daily Stoic or Daily Laws, stuff like that. I'll read like something in the morning, just a quick thing, just kind of get the day started. Or sometimes like a short devotion or something like that. But for the most part, until I get to the gym, if I'm listening to like, maybe then when I get there, I'll listen to something. For the
Mhm.
most part, I'm trying to keep it like just minimal talking in
Yeah.
in the morning. As I went back, I was just like, man, I was looking back at just some of the things that I've put in my notes file and in my
Mhm.
journal. And then I also started making a playlist of each month, if I can remember to, after I
Ooh.
listen to that. Because you can't do it. Anyways, I use Spotify for the most part, which I know horrifies you. You think it's annoying.
What?
But
Oh, for podcasts, yeah, but for
yeah,
music,
yeah.
obviously not.
So for Spotify, obviously you can, well, not obviously, but for the people that are aware of it, you can make playlists. So
Yeah.
what I started doing was, if I remember to, add the podcast that I listen to, for example, February 2025 listens, so that then I
Okay.
can go back and if I'm talking to somebody, I'm like, oh, I think there was this podcast I listened to that you would really enjoy, then I can at least try and
Hmm.
narrow it down to the month. I'm not going to say I'm very good at remembering to put it in the playlist, but yeah. So as I was going back and looking at that, sometimes I was like, man, a lot of these, I'm like almost like binge consuming them in the morning. And like I
Mm,
said, I already have enough internal dialogue going on.
yeah,
So yeah, so that's my change morning routine wise. So that's what's up with me. There you go.
that's exciting. Have
So
you
yeah,
noticed a change so far?
I have, yeah,
Ooh.
I've noticed a change or it's like placebo effect. I've told myself that I
Yeah.
noticed a change. I do, I do, I do believe that I feel a bit more like clear headed. And
Mm,
for frame of reference here, I'm on a Monday through Friday, most of the weekdays. I hesitate for a second because on Thursdays I coach in the morning, but Monday,
mm.
Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, I'm on an entrepreneurship coaching call at 6:45 a.m.
That's
So
early.
yeah, it's called the Morning Meetup, and it's hosted. There's a little book club snippet from 6:45 to 7, and then the main call that you dial into is from 7 to 8.
Okay.
So I'm usually like I try to be done with training and stuff like that by like 6:30, 6:40, so I can hop on that Zoom call. And sometimes I'll just listen in as opposed
Mm,
to sitting and watching and whatnot.
yeah.
But that's the thing. It's like I was listening to 2 to 3 podcasts plus then jump into this coaching session, and it's just like
That is a lot.
yeah, it was too much because it was like overconsumption and not taking action on
Mm,
any of the things. So I found that if I can let the morning meetup be my first main like thing that I'm listening to of
yeah.
substance, then that's helpful. Reading, all good, but listening to, it was just too many voices. The voices in my head. But yeah. All right. Okay.
Exciting.
Okay. Well, we let's transition into talking about today's topic. And what we're going to talk about today actually is somewhat adjacent to you talking about your training cycle, your strength gains, and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
So I didn't really have to stretch too much to make that reach. Um, so let's dig into the question: is it fact or myth? Women can handle more training volume than men. So,
And we're talking primarily in lifting for this
cor-
discussion.
yes, we are talking primarily, or yeah, we're talking about lifting.
All about, yeah.
Yeah, we're talking all about lifting. So let me not even let's not even say primarily. Like, we won't care about
Yeah.
running. No, I'm not going to say that. But we're not.
Running is just different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And perhaps we can get into that in a future episode because I know when I sent you this idea for a topic, your response was that in the running world, it's actually the opposite assumption or
It's
myth
typically
for women.
it's typically what you see if two athletes, a man and a woman, are at the same level.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I think about pro runners, like it's not uncommon for men to do, 100, 120-mile weeks. And then women, it's usually a little bit lower, but I've been thinking about it since you brought this up.
Yeah.
And I'd be curious more so to compare their time training because men are faster. So like
Okay.
mileage to mileage isn't a direct comparison unless they're running the same pace. But
Gotcha.
if they're at the same level, like a man at my same level is running faster than I'm running.
Okay.
So like if you think of the best pro male runner, the
Yeah.
best pro female runner, the female runner's slower,
Right.
right?
Right.
So like
Typically, yes. Yeah.
typically, yeah. So like if the man does 120 miles per week, if the female trains for the same amount of time, that will be less miles. So
Gotcha. Okay. I see where you're going. Yeah, that makes sense. And that's why
yeah,
we're going to focus on lifting and
lifting.
resistance training because I was able to follow along with that, but I would easily get lost in that conversation just now. So,
Yeah. Well, and in running, everyone is always focused on miles, but it's like
yeah.
it really depends on your pace to how many miles you're going to be running. So we don't have to get into
Yeah.
that.
Okay. Miss me with all that. All right.
Yeah.
So let's see. So what we are going to go through here is first we're going to talk about like just the general myth, some of the myths that surround this question of can women handle more training volume? And again, we're talking lifting weights here. So resistance-based training. Can women handle more volume than men? We'll cover a few things that are myths and then also the facts, couple of science-based things to point you towards, including training around the menstrual cycle, which is Kelly's favorite topic. To that eye roll like was heard around the world. We'll talk a bit about
Uh,
recovery, and then most importantly, from my perspective, most importantly, we are going to talk about why context actually matters in this whole thing, because there's so much nuance to this particular question. So first and foremost, the general myth is that um, this the excuse me the one of the general myths is that women can't train as hard or as often as men.
mm,
And this particular myth, you can tell I've got a little bit of an outline to read from here, comes from old school assumptions around fragility, hormones, and limitations. Yes, super,
yep.
super old school. It reminds me of
Mm,
some of the previous advertising and marketing of,
mm.
the super tiny dumbbells and just I'm
Always
picturing.
pink.
Yes, it's always pink. Maybe every now and then you'd throw in a light purple, a little lavender to
Yep. A
spice things
lilac.
up. Yeah, a lilac. Yeah. But overall, when you actually look at physiology, you look at recovery patterns and just overall the research, it does not support the fact that just generally women can't train as hard or as often as men. So, something that is a fact, however, though, based on just physical makeup, let's say for physiology, is that women
Mhm.
do tend to generally be more resistant to fatigue. But here's the key, and this is the way that it's phrased: more resistant to fatigue during submaximal efforts. So, in layman's terms, what that means, a submaximal effort is exactly what it sounds like when you're not specifically maxing out, i.e., not specifically training specific for like a 1 rep max, like Kelly had talked
Yeah.
about. So, the fact people take that particular fact where women generally tend to be more resistant to fatigue, they take that fact and kind of leave out the part where it says during submaximal efforts, and then that just gets kind of twisted. So in digging into why this may be the case, there's a couple of things that come up here. There's two terms that come up here. One is going to be aerobic metabolism, and then the other one is going to be the fact that women do tend to have a higher percentage of slow twitch, or what's called type 1 muscle fibers. So you're probably sitting here like, okay, what's that mean? So aerobic metabolism by definition, so it's basically how the body creates energy using oxygen. So slower but efficient. Think more of like endurance type training, or think higher rep, lower weight work. Okay. So that's typically when people are talking about like lifting lifting to improve your muscular endurance. Typically, you're talking things that are in the higher rep range. In order to be in the higher rep range, you typically are not going to your absolute max because you're prioritizing the higher number of reps. So
Mhm.
that's something that plays into like this whole idea of aerobic metabolism. And then when you talk about slow twitch muscle fibers, so these are fibers that contract more slowly, but they can resist fatigue and they sustain performance, again, endurance for longer periods of time. So, again, great for submaximal volume based training. So, this is where, from my perspective, as somebody who programs lifting workouts, resistance training, hypertrophy, the whole umbrella, this is where people will take something and they'll say this program is specifically designed for women, and I have the
Mm.
science and the research to back it up. So you take something that generally, based on the average female having more slow twitch muscle fibers and also having generally a better aerobic metabolism, you take that and then you essentially craft it to fit your narrative that this
Mhm.
program is made for women, which typically is higher reps, lower weight. And I've just revealed the secrets of female or women's training programs.
Yeah. And I know we just said we weren't going to talk about running, but
Go
I
for it.
gotta.
Nah, go for it. It's all good.
uh, this is why you see in as ultras get longer that the difference between the top male and the top female gets smaller and smaller, and in some cases, the women can win outright for the reasons you were just saying. Because in an ultra, it's not anywhere near your max effort.
Mm,
You're running far for a long period of time, so that's kind of why the playing field starts to level out there. Um, yeah, so very similar idea in running. So the long, slow distance women tend to be better at. And in running, part of it is there's a theory that women are just better at naturally pacing themselves, which I find interesting versus across like long periods of time,
okay.
um, which obviously plays into being able to perform better across long distances. Yeah.
Yeah, like not going out like hard and heavy right at the jump.
Yeah. Being
Okay.
like more steady.
Yeah. Interesting theory. Okay. I have
Yeah.
nothing to support
I don't
or
think,
debunk that. So,
yeah, I don't know of any. This doesn't really mean much. I don't think
mm,
there's any science. I think it's mostly anecdote from other like well-known
yeah.
coaches I've heard of, but I also haven't searched for scientific studies, so who knows?
Okay. Let's see. So to wrap up this particular one, as far as just covering the fact that women generally are more resistant to fatigue during submaximal efforts, there's a couple of studies that came up to support this. One was in 2014. It's entitled Sex Differences in Fatigability of Dynamic Contractions. So, what they did is they compared fatigue and recovery in men and women using isometric and dynamic contractions. So, an isometric contraction is where you hold something at a particular position. So, think of it like a bicep curl, where you would hold you would curl, and let's say that your elbow and your arm angle, whatever you want to call it, is at 90 degrees, and you would hold that. So that's an isometric contraction, and they did that at submaximal intensities. So again, remember, not going to failure. And what they found in that particular study is that women showed greater fatigue resistance, especially in the lower body dynamic work. And then there was another study in 2021, that one called Sex Differences in Muscle Fatigue and Recovery, a Systematic Review. That would make an awful Netflix title. Um, in that particular one, that was a meta-analysis, it looks like. So they reviewed dozens of studies, it says, on male versus female fatigue, endurance, and recovery metrics under resistance protocols. And in the summary, they found that women consistently demonstrated lower fatigue rates and quicker recovery, again, during repeated submaximal efforts. I do not have reference to the study right now. I do remember there was a study that again supported that women could handle more training volume. And if I remember correctly, they specifically used the bicep curl. And what they found is that as the sets went on, and I believe in this particular one, I should have had my notes ready on this one, but in this particular one, they did go to the assumed same level of intensity. So the same
Mm.
RIR or RPE, reps in reserve or rate of perceived exertion. So they went to the same level for both the men and the women. And what they found is that the men needed to lower the amount of weight that they were lifting faster than the women needed to lower the amount of weight that they were lifting. So
Hmm.
let's say that Kelly and I are both instructed to lift to where we have no more than 1 to 2 reps left in the tank, which is reps in reserve, RIR. So we're going to do Kelly and I are going to do bicep curls at an RIR of 1 to 2. So let's say that I do 40 pounds and Kelly does, respectfully, what would you like to pick? I'm not about to go there.
I was wondering what you were going to say.
Nope. Nope. What would you like to throw in there?
Let's say
Pick a number.
30.
Cool. Okay, so Kelly did 40. I did 40 pounds. Kelly decided to do 30 pounds because she was being nice and she didn't want me to feel bad. Okay, so set 1, we both get to RIR 1 to 2. It takes, she's able to do that with the 30s. I do it with the 40s. Set number 2, same thing, 40s and 30s. Set number 3, I need to drop down to 35 because I'm just not able to kick it. Kelly is still going with her 30s. So that's a very short example of where in this particular study that I have no reference to, and you don't have to believe me, it's totally okay. The conclusion there was made that it was proven that women could handle more training volume than men because although they both work to the same amount of intensity or reps in reserve, the women were able to keep the higher load, so the 30 pounds all the way through, whereas the men had to drop. So that's, I don't know, do with that what you will.
Interesting.
Okay. Yep. Let's see. Here's another fact, and then we'll get into a little bit of context because that definitely helps. Or actually, we'll do this fact about the recovery between sets and sessions, and then the quick one about the menstrual cycle. So, fact: women may recover faster between sets and sessions, and I remember hearing this one like right from the jump when I first got into training from a actual like professionally like personal training people, that women didn't need as much rest, was the way it was phrased to me. Like, women don't need as much rest and recovery between sets. Yeah. So a couple of notes on this particular one. Estrogen has muscle protective and anti-inflammatory effects, which may reduce muscle damage and improve recovery. And then generally, women also often report less DOMS, which is delayed onset muscle soreness, as equivalent relative intensities, or at equivalent relative intensities. Going back to the example that I was talking about with the RIR, like reps in reserve, we're both working to that. I may feel like I need a little bit more rest, whereas Kelly, according to what some of the research says, may not. So not needing as much rest to recover. So the science fact that would back that would be that estrogen itself may contribute to being able to recover better.
I've never heard that.
Well, there's a couple of studies here. So one was in 2014. Interestingly, this is Brad Schoenfeld and Brett Contreras. Brett Contreras is the glute guy, and Brad Schoenfeld is it Brad Schoenfeld? Yeah, Brad Schoenfeld. He's in, I think, the Eric Helms camp too. One of the OGs when it comes to like all things like natural bodybuilding. One of the OGs, like very, very well respected in the space. So in 2014, study summary entitled Strength and Hypertrophy Training for Women. So it was a literature review on resistance training in women with an emphasis on hormonal and muscular response differences. So what they found was that estrogen helps reduce muscle damage and oxidative stress, supporting faster recovery. I have no further information on that because I didn't dig super deep into it. There was one other one. This one's back from 2001. So this one was related to sports medicine. So effects of the menstrual cycle on muscle strength and exercise performance. So what they did was they reviewed hormonal fluctuations throughout the menstrual cycle and the impact on training and recovery. I know you hate this so much. So In this
Only
particular
for running.
study, the finding was that estrogen appears to blunt the cortisol response and support muscle repair. So, I don't know. I think this all still is going to come down to being individual dependent at the end
Yeah.
of the day.
I mean, I have a lot of questions about the specifics of these studies and, like,
Yeah, which I
what they
yeah,
were measuring, what the programs were like, especially, like, a 2001 one,
I would agree.
you
I
know?
would totally agree with that. My intention with throwing that stuff out there is just to also acknowledge some of the things that are utilized in both sides of the argument.
Yeah.
Cuz because really I will tell you that generally the response that I hear and also the response that I would give to support saying to give my own, like, hey, here's my opinion on why you're saying that women don't need as much recovery or women can handle more volume, is that there's no way for me to really like say this without it sounding problematic. So I'll just sound problematic,
Go
is
for it.
that generally women don't train with the same.
I know what you're trying to say, and that's
Yeah,
what I've been
and I
thinking this
don't
whole
wanna
time
well, and I don't
with
wanna
the studies, because like, I can say it, like
uh, well, just simply saying women don't train as hard as men is not the it it doesn't have the right intention to
yeah,
me. That doesn't have the right intention. I think that when it comes down to it, from my perspective, without being given the best specific information, women are more apt to leave reps on the table.
yeah,
Does it sound like I'm dancing? Because
a little bit.
I could definitely get that. Yeah. But I hopefully, like, I've got enough credibility with you here to know that I don't think women are walking around like not ever lifting heavy weights
No, but I think it's a
ever.
minority that are. It's changing now, but,
Yeah.
like,
Oh
I
yeah.
think if you look
Big
over
time.
time, especially, like, these older studies, like,
Yeah.
were they even pushing the women enough
Yeah.
to get some of these results? I mean, I don't doubt that women are more fatigue resistant, but it also comes down to, like, how did they actually measure that? Like, is it self-reported that I'm going at the intensity you're telling me to go to? Because I feel like that would be I don't know. I've met a lot of women who don't know what they can do in terms of lifting,
Yeah.
and they think they're at a higher intensity when they really could do, like, 10 more reps, and I'm just like, "You are nowhere close to to where you
Yeah,
think you are,"
I just
kinda
I
thing.
don't know how to phrase it any other way than the way that I think it. So I think that generally, and this is if I'm going to generalize, that if I picked just right off the street 10 women and right off the street 10 men and knew nothing about their training backgrounds or anything like that, like not making any sort of judgment of I'm going to pick them because they look like this or them because they look like that. If I took 10
Yeah.
men and 10 women, more often than not, the men have been conditioned to lift as heavy as freaking possible. And it doesn't really matter what their form looks like because it's like,
Yeah.
boom, boom, boom. I can lift heavier than everybody else. And generally, women have been conditioned to not
Not.
go to that point. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, or even, like, lift much at all, especially, like, with the myths around getting bulky
Yeah,
and,
because
you know.
yeah, because this is the part where I remind myself that I've formed like a really good bubble around myself. As
Mhm.
much as go out, and we've talked about this multiple times on this podcast, like as much as I go out to seek other perspectives and look for the opposite of what I think, I still have to remember that my algorithm on social media is going to show me primarily like what I focus on. So it's not going to show me a ton of like Pilates like stuff. It's not going to
Yeah.
show me a bunch of lighter weight, that sort of thing. It's going to show me bodybuilding, hypertrophy, CrossFit, powerlifting. Like those are the things that it's going to try to gear me towards because the majority of the people that I follow, that I connect with, and that I like and like physically, hit the button and all that
Mhm.
stuff is typically more related to that. So but there's a
Yeah.
whole somebody else is having a completely different experience because they're more conditioned to that. So, all right, well, so let's finish out with um,
Context.
yeah. So let's go to context. Or actually, I was gonna no, we're gonna do the context thing. We're not gonna get into the phases, the luteal phase and all that jazz.
We don't
Okay.
need to get into all that.
All right, so context matters. So what type of training volume are we talking about? And I think that this is really, really, really important. And as I said before we started getting into this topic, I think this could be one of, if not the most important things to consider when trying to figure out, okay, is it generally true or not that women can handle more volume than men? When we talk about more volume, what are we talking about? And more volume, many folks assume that what we're talking about is that they can train more often or they can do
Mm.
more reps. Like those are the two things that typically come into play. So when someone says to me, hey, I noticed that the program that you built is 4 days per week, I'm used to 5 to 6 days per week, they're talking about training frequency. But then when we take a look at, okay, 4 days per week, and then we're going to do about 5 to 7 exercises, maybe 7 at most. I'd say more like 4 to 6 exercises. We're going to do 3 really hard working sets of each of those exercises, maybe 4 of your primary, but generally 3 to 4 sets, very hard sets. I want to make sure I pronounce that right. Hard sets of the exercise. I just thought about that. Like, oh Lord, that could make a really good t-shirt. So 3 to 4 very tough working sets, TS, of
Yes.
the exercise, including a couple of warm-up or ramp-up sets at least. When we do that, that's where we're really talking about volume, because we're talking about your sets, the number of sets that you have, the number of reps that you do, and the amount of weight that you lift. When you take all of that into account and realize that generally you want to leave no more than 1 to 3 reps on the table, all of a sudden it's like, well, when you do that 5, 6, 7, let's be realistic for some people, days out of the week, I don't know if I'm so ready to hop on the train that women handle more volume than men. I also know plenty of men who are leaving a whole bunch on the table too. So let's not just, like, people leaving reps on the table and leaving gains on the table is not separate to gender
Mm-mm.
at all, or sex differences, like, at all. So just generally, um, there is this thought that women can handle more training volume. However, we need to remember that when we're talking about volume, it's not just being able to train more often. We're also talking about, like, one of the main questions being, okay, how many sets, how many reps, how much weight are you lifting? And when we say how much weight are you lifting, we're talking about weight relative to failure, or weight
Mm.
relative to the intensity that we're looking for. Not like, the example of, well, JK's lifting a 40-pound weight, Kelly's lifting a 30-pound weight, which she chose, by the way. So that means that men can handle more. No, we're not talking absolutes. We're talking
Yeah.
relative here. So that's something to be aware of. But there have been some studies that claim that that's the case. And again, they were submaximal, so not like 1 rep max strength power type stuff. They typically are going to be more muscular endurance based, is going to be the piece there. So anything else that
Mm.
you'd like to add there? Sorry, I just kind of went off on that, but yeah.
No, I was having a thought. That I'm curious. It doesn't exactly apply,
Mhm.
but I'm wondering if part of the reason I didn't like 5-3-1 is that I can handle more volume. Obviously, not once we get up to like 95%
Yeah,
reps. Because I'm assuming this is a giant assumption. I could be wrong. I'm assuming this program was made with men in mind at the very start of it.
that's,
You know,
oh, I would definitely guess that. Well,
male power lifters is my assumption.
we've talked about this before. we've talked about this before when you were talking about a certain book, and I can't remember what it was, that was highlighting different things that we may not think about that are male centric, like
Oh god, that
sidewalks
stupid book, I haven't
or
finished it yet.
playgrounds and things like that,
The
right?
snow plowing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the um I actually thought about that like not that long ago. When I was in a meeting. Yeah, I was in a meeting at work and I had just brought up something and brought up the fact that, hey, I do want to acknowledge the fact that we're trying to make decisions, and part of the group that is going to be impacted by these decisions is not currently represented here. And I'm not talking about from a race or gender standpoint. It's like a particular like that's not important. But basically it's just that thought,
Yeah.
that same thing. And I think I may have mentioned to you at that time when we were talking about that is, is the assumption that if a particular group is not in the room or if a particular person is not involved in the planning, then that person's interests are not represented. So if there's no men in the room, does that mean that it's a program that's geared towards women? If there's no women in the room,
Mm.
does it mean that it's a program that's geared towards men? I'm not going to say I don't know that women were thought of when 5-3 Wendler 5. I mean, especially because that program's been around for forever.
Yeah. I'm
So I
guessing
don't know.
it's based on the science that was available at the time, which we know is probably
Mhm.
in men. So, like, indirectly, females aren't taken into account as
Yeah.
much. Not like I don't think it's a direct,
Well,
like,
let me ask you. Okay, so let me ask you this,
yeah,
because I come at it from the bias that the basics of training are the basics of training. And when I
yeah,
say the basics of training, I mean that the general hypertrophy range can be anywhere from 5 to 30 reps. Like that that's a
yeah.
large range. So 5 to 30 reps.
Huge range.
That the three functions of hypertrophy are mechanical tension, metabolic stress, and why am I blanking?
I don't know, we did a whole podcast
I
episode on
am
it at one
blanking.
point.
Mechanical stress, or I'm sorry, metabolic stress, mechanical tension,
Mhm.
and I am dumb. I can't remember right now. But
I can't
anyways,
remember either.
I like literally do this all the time. But that being basic, like leave 1 to 3 reps in the tank, focus on the
Yeah,
three layers of hypertrophy, and focus on push, pull, hinge, squat, overhead press. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So then the question is, if you were to take something like Wendler 531,
Yeah.
is there anything that you would change to gear it specifically towards a female, or anything that
Not
sticks
specifically
out to
for a female. I
yeah
think I would
for
just
like a
maybe
woman?
change things in general.
Well, yeah, which again
Well,
is
because 'cause
personal
I'm talking
preference.
about yeah, but I'm talking about the 5-3-1,
Hmm.
just, like, the main lift components,
Yeah,
not, like, the added
the
accessory
accessory
work,
work. Okay,
'cause that was that was a brutal amount of volume, I'm not
yeah.
gonna lie. 5 5 5 by 12, no thank you.
Y
Um,
yeah, I
but
think
yeah,
that
I don't know,
yeah, I get what you're
I
saying.
think it would be different, in my opinion, for me, it would be a better program if I did 5-3-1 and didn't adjust the numbers to be based off 90% of my true 1 rep max. Like,
Okay.
the first set just felt too light.
Which again, though, it was muscle damage. I
Oh.
blanked. I don't know why I blanked. Oh my gosh. I think it's because there's also often an argument between mechanical tension and muscle damage. Like
Mm,
if
yeah.
muscle damage, some people argue that one or the other isn't there's not a difference between the two. They're like you can't really tell the difference between if you have mechanical tension or muscle damage. Like you can't tell
Oh,
because it's
yeah.
not like muscle damage doesn't mean you just are, emotional damage. It's not like you're injured. So anyways, um but again, you're talking what you're talking about is basically like, for lack of a better way to put it, like you started too light. Like that's an error.
But I
But
didn't not because I tested my 1 rep max, and then I went off the percentages. Like, it wasn't like, go to RPE 8.
Okay.
It was do 65% of 95% or 90% of your 1 rep max. So I actually have a theory
Okay.
that it kind of is similar to some things that happen in running. I'm wondering if, because like powerlifters lift really heavy in general, right?
Right. Yeah.
Relative to what I'm lifting. I wonder if my 1 rep maxes are just like not too low, but like too low for these generic percentages. Like as you get up in weight,
Mm-hmm.
65% of a higher number, I don't know if it feels the same as my 65% compared to my 1 rep max is. Like if your 65% is 300 pounds
Yeah.
and mine is 95,
Yep.
I don't know if they feel the same. Obviously, I'm never gonna know. Um, but like
Mhm.
something similar happens in running when you're like more of a beginner and you're not running as much volume, you can handle
Yes.
more higher intensity
Yeah.
because you don't have as much volume. Um, so I do wonder if that might be part of it. Like if my 1 rep max was 100 pounds more, would starting at 65% of that or 65% of 90% of that, whatever, would
I
that feel heavier to me?
see. I see. I see. I see.
Like the first one for most of those felt like something I would do just to warm up for a working set. Like not even getting to the largest warm up of a working set, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but
The highest.
okay. And you wouldn't chalk that up to just underestimating what 65% it actually is for you?
No, because that first week I tested all my 1 rep maxes. The thing I think the biggest thing is
Yeah.
basing off 90% of that
Ah, okay.
because that takes a big chunk out,
Yeah.
obviously.
I see
Like,
what you're saying. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think we're both right
I mean, I don't
here.
think anyone's wrong. I'm just saying for me, it felt like there should have been more time spent doing more reps closer to not my 1 rep max, but
Yeah, well, that's part of it, and we'll wrap up in just a few minutes here. Maybe that's part of an understanding of how certain programs are designed is there's an assumption of having gone through maybe like if something's a beginner program or an intermediate program or an advanced program. Does that make sense? Like, no, it doesn't.
No.
No, okay. Because so basically, you're like, you're
I
like,
mean, I don't think that program assumes you're at a certain level.
I don't know. That's what I'm.
According to what I read, because I was looking
Yeah.
for one that is like, I don't know, pretty basic, I guess, powerlifting one.
Hmm. Which it
And that's,
is.
yeah. And that one is recommended, like, I think it says for any level. I don't quite
Yeah.
recall, but
I mean,
I did,
it's universally
yeah.
accepted as one of the best that's out there.
Yeah. And like, my 1 rep maxes did go up. So I can't really
Right.
complain.
Yeah.
But it was just, yeah, interesting. Just feeling like
Mm.
it felt like the first 2 sets, especially of that first 4-week cycle, were warm-ups for my 3rd set, which would be a working set, but that was my only working set,
Yeah.
So it felt a little weird, even though, like, the 3rd set you go until you can't,
Yeah.
which that first week really annihilated me, but I was also sick, so I'm gonna chalk it up to that.
Yeah. Now now I could see where an argument could definitely be made where, let's say you do bring the menstrual cycle into play here.
Okay.
Okay. Here, stick with me for just a minute because we'll wrap in 5. Okay.
Okay.
So there the if I build an 8-week program
Yeah.
and the percentages don't care what your energy levels are each week.
Right.
The percentages are the percentages.
Yeah.
So, if you notice that as part of your cycle,
Mhm.
you tend to have less energy and you tend to be more lethargic during week whatever of your
Mhm.
cycle, that I would acknowledge that plays a role into whether or not let's say it's week 5 of the program,
Okay.
and that also happens to fall on a week where, based on you specifically,
Mhm.
notice that is the week that typically energy levels the worst, cramps, whatever, like all that, you get hit. That would have an impact on your performance in that particular program. And the program is not written for you to adjust based on your energy level or your biofeedback. That program, or most strength-based programs, are written based on the percentages each week. So I could see how somebody could argue that this gets into the whole like cycle syncing your lifting
But
programs.
yeah, I don't know where you're trying to go with this.
What I'm trying to say is, if somebody was going to be arguing for planning your workouts based, like building a strength-based program, not necessarily being something that takes into account women and the reaction that they may or may not have during certain portions of their cycle. That's all. That's what I'm saying. I'm trying to make the argument that I don't really believe in, but I'm trying to, that's what I'm trying to do. Yeah. Because say if you're supposed to, like, say that your testing week for your 1 rep max also happens to fall on the week where traditionally you are not feeling your best during your cycle. Do you think that would impact your 1 rep max?
I don't really know.
Right. That's I I I don't know. But I would certainly think that if, again, as someone who's never experienced a cycle, I'm saying, like, if I have a client, like I have clients who they know during a particular week, like their weight will fluctuate way more than other
Mhm.
weeks. So I would think that there's a chance. There's a chance that if that's also the same week that they're supposed to do, like that's their week number 9, like their testing week,
Mhm.
that program was written with, like, it doesn't matter what's going on. That's your testing week based on that particular week. But I would still acknowledge, like, okay, if history says that that particular week is also going to be a week where you have lower energy, I'm not saying you need to change anything. I'm just saying, like, okay, just you can at least acknowledge that. I'm not saying you.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all. I know you hate the linking of the menstrual cycle and training. I get it. I totally
I
get it.
do. Well, I think it's
It still aligns. I do still think from my my male perspective, I I do not plan around. I plan around like RIR and RPE. Like that's how I plan.
oh yeah.
So, yeah, that's how
I mean,
I
I would
plan stuff.
say if you are concerned that your cycle is going to affect how you feel, don't pick a program based on percentages.
Yeah, or I don't know. For me, so I'm trying to think. I haven't had anybody that I wrote a program for like that in a long. I mean, it's been a long time. If somebody were to ask me that, I would tell them and they were coming up on like um their testing week for
Mhm.
their 1 rep max, like their retest or whatever it was, the final week for their 1 rep max also
Yeah.
fell on a week where they're like, hey, traditionally, like this week tends to be a week where things are a little bit more out of whack.
Mhm.
Then I would tell them to repeat the previous week
Yeah.
and just push that one off by 1 week if they're like super dialed into like knowing what the results are. Hey, I'm going to be, whatever it says my 1 rep max is, then that's what I'm going to use as my assumed 1 rep max for the next like 9 weeks of training, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Then I would tell them like, hey, if you're really concerned about it, and you, especially if it's going to like get in your head, I would say we'll just repeat if it's week 7, repeat week 7, and
Mhm.
then we'll get to the testing week number 8. So if somebody were to ask me, that's how I would handle it. I don't know.
Okay. I just don't know how we got there from talking about
Because I was trying to,
531.
because where we got there, or why I took it there, was just exploring, okay, if you have a program like 531 or a small off cycle, or any other big but boring, I can't remember, it's like some of the other ones that are out there.
Oh, I did see
Um,
Big But Boring.
yeah, that when you're following those percentage based programs, um, I could see someone who has built their business around, I build training programs specifically for women, and I do training phases based around your cycle. And there's definitely coaches that are out there, and that's,
Hmm.
they built an entire platform based on that. I'm that person that tries to take that person's argument or their bias, and I try to figure out, okay, how would they try to basically say, hey, this is why my program is better than that program. Because, part of my thing is I help people try to simplify stuff, and it doesn't need
Yeah.
to be this. Yeah. So that's the argument that I would make. I would be like, well, my workouts are better because I take this into account, while you're following that program that doesn't care how you feel. The percentage is the percentage. So somebody would that's basically how it goes. You just take that, and you're just like, well, see, doesn't care about women. That's how it works. I don't know. Hate to tell you, but I know I'm not telling you anything new. I'm just saying, that's basically how it goes. For
Yeah,
real.
I know. I
As
just don't, I
the guy.
never
Go ahead.
understand how there can be a generically written plan for cycle syncing.
I you're I don't know. I
Like
just
that
know
will
before
literally
that's
only work for someone who has a perfect 28-day cycle every freaking month.
I agree.
Never varies. The and how they feel matches what the hormones are supposed to make us feel. Because I've
Yeah.
heard from certain women that during period week they feel their best,
Yes.
once it comes. I've heard
Right.
from other women that's their worst week. So
Exactly.
how are you going to be you need to sync with your cycle and then tell people, well, when your period comes, this is what you should do because of science.
They're probably going based on the general assumptions, right?
Yeah, I just don't think the general assumptions.
As far as what is it, the follicular phase and the luteal phase, they're just going based on those general assumptions. I'm guessing. I don't know.
Probably. I just feel like there's a lot left out. Don't even get me started on birth control, which
Okay. All
at
right.
least
We won't then.
50% of women I think are on. So
Yeah.
anyway.
Okay. All right. So we're going to go ahead and pull this train back in the station. So at the end of the day, Kelly, do you think it is
Yeah,
a fact or a myth women can handle more training volume than men?
sure. Fact.
Okay. And with that, if you would like an an ultra plan built for you around your cycle, Kelly is not available. So,
No,
anyways, all right,
not
we're going
available
to wrap up
for
today's
anything.
episode because, yeah, we're, yeah. All
The
right.
time has come.
The time has come
Uh,
and gone. Yes.
if you're still here and you want to follow us, you can do so on Instagram at Lifting Running Living Pod. All we post are our episodes, so sorry if you're expecting more than that. We do have individual Instagrams, which you can also find linked in our show notes. Or you can email us at liftingrunninglivingpod@gmail.com. And yeah, you can leave a rating and review. 5
All
stars
right.
only, though. If you have a lower one, you can just email that or just send it to your group chat. Keep it there.
She said you can email that one. Yeah. We'll file that in the other spot. All right. So with that, episode number 49 coming to a close. Thank you so much. We appreciate you for listening. Take care, and we'll talk to you next time.
Bye.